Hello, everyone. It's Thursday, and that means a webinar. Hello, hope you're all doing well on this very warm day in Brisbane. Anyway, I'm Chris Irons, Strata Advisor, former Commissioner for Body Corporate and Community Management. With me, Frank Higginson, Partner, Hines Legal. Frank, welcome.
Hello, everyone, yet again.
Welcome in particular to everybody who is having a webinar watching party. Now, you might say, who on earth would do such a thing? Well, we actually have first-hand evidence that that is occurring. We know for a fact that some people hold webinar watching parties. So for those of you, you know who we're talking about, thank you, and have another drink for Frank and I while you're watching this one. As always, please don't forget to like and share. Really appreciate the feedback. We've been getting some really good feedback, not just about the webinars, but about content. And don't be afraid to give us constructive criticism as well. Certainly many people are not, let's put it that way. But it helps us improve what we do, and it helps us deliver something that is responsive. There's no point in us spending this time every week if it's not actually going to be of any use or meaning for people. You agree, Frank, I assume?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So please like and share. Today, we're going to untie the knot. We are going to untie the knot of body corporate problems. And a little bit of this, well, a fair bit of this is about me. It's always about me. It's not just about me, though. It's about you as well, Frank.
Enough of Chris talking about Chris. How about I talk about Chris? Yeah, so this is interesting because it's probably, it's back to the genesis of what brought Chris Irons out of his role as commissioner to work with us.
From my ivory tower, how you were able to extricate me from my ivory tower, Frank.
Well, to the dark side or from the dark side, mate, I suppose, whichever way you look at it. And I think probably I've learned a bucket load from working with Chris over the last almost 12 months now. And really, from a law firm perspective, we provide legal services. And I think more than anything else, the analogy that a client put to me at one stage from a lawyer's perspective is when your only tool is a hammer, every problem is a nail. So you come to lawyers, legal solutions, we either help people transact something in a litigious or opposing sense. We'll usually knock people around on the other side. And where Chris and I both got to with this is we think there are other ways to approach problems for those in the strata industry. So that's everyone. So this is not inclusive or exclusive of any particular group. So it's committees, it's lot owners, it's resident managers, it's strata managers, it's committee members with respect to other committee members and all that sort of stuff. Because before this, we had people coming to us saying, here's what I want you to do. And then as lawyers, you tend to go and do it. And so the untying the knot, which is something that I suppose, Chris, we probably need to give some definitions around what we're actually talking about, has really helped some clients get to where they need to go without the need for formal legal intervention in the sense. So, mate, I suppose let's start. We've come up with a range of examples of what might be the trigger for reaching out to us in relation to something like this.
Yeah, so when we say the phrase untying the knot, what do we actually mean? So I'll go first. So untying the knot means that you know that there's a problem, you can feel it within yourself. So it's a very sort of strong, experiential kind of reaction. You feel it, you're stressed, you're angry, you're concerned, you're upset, but you don't actually know the exact cause or the exact solution. You know it's a body corporate problem, issue, but you just can't quite figure out where all the pieces fit. That's a knot.
Yeah. And you probably think that there has to be some legislative part of this, or there's got to be some precedent or other decision where your particular issue has been ventilated, but you don't know where to go to actually find it.
That's another part of the knot. Another part of the knot might be that you've had a series of issues over a long period of time, and they've grown into an attitude or a narrative that you just can't shake. The best example I can give about that is an owner who says, and Frank and I have heard it many times, they're against me. The committee is against me. They are victimizing me. They're harassing me. They're doing this to me. So it's that when you've gotten to that position, and the flip side is true too. Yeah, this can be true of a committee as well. We've heard it plenty of times. When you have got a hardened position like that, that suggests that there is a knot to be untied.
Or it might be, a particular issue. It could be 6, 12, 18 months ago. And ever since that particular event, circumstance, decision, or otherwise, there's been a bunch of little niggles that keep appearing, and you can only frame them back to that particular event being the cause of what has been a source of ongoing consternation. So there's another knot there where it just keeps rattling on top of each other and becoming bigger.
Another way that the knot manifests itself, I think, is through inconsistency. I actually think that that's a big one, that you see other people in the body corporate being treated differently to you, whether positively or negatively. And again, this is both sides of the equation. It's not just about an owner, it can be other people as well. That sense of unfairness, unjustness, inconsistency is definitely, I think, a signal that there is a knot there to be untied.
Or, it could have been something in the media. Like Chris was quoted in the Gold Coast Bulletin today about sort of issues with body corporate managers, but it might be that pops up across your feed. You get a newsletter from somewhere, you see something on Facebook, someone says, "What have you seen this?" And you think, you know what, that same issue is happening to me. It's that what's going on there is happening to me.
I think that's a big one, that one too. Another one is where you actually have a sense of, that's it, I need to do something. So it's actually quite an empowering moment. You go, you know what, that's it, I need to take some action now. I need to stand up for what I think is right. I need to stand up for my interests. I want to take back control. That is often a signal that you not just are, that there's a knot, but you're ready to untie it.
If nothing changes, nothing changes, does it? You can keep doing the same thing. Another one that would be a trigger in a sense for these things is wasted of money on something, or you're seeing the value of your investment potentially lessening because of something that's going on in your particular body corporate. So it might be spending a bucket load of money on lawyers pursuing a particularly vexatious something, or your view it's a vexatious something. That why are we doing this? There has to be another way.
Another one that I've encountered a couple of times is that you see something happen and you just know, based upon your past experience, that it's not proper process and it's not best practice. That often happens with people who've got a background in business or finance or even teaching, I think, is one that's come up a couple of times, where in those professions where things are very regulated and happen step by step by step by step, and then they come into a body corporate situation, they're like, hang on, that's not how things are done. Surely. Another really good analogy before I forget is people who've been involved in community organisations, such as incorporated associations. So they're part of a very sort of regulated hierarchical structure, very used to things and meetings being conducted in a particular way. And then when they come into their body corporate and they see things not being done in a similar way, they're like, hang on, that's not right. Something is not right about process there.
Another example might be body corporate's been involved in a proceeding, or a lot of owners been involved in a proceeding, there's been an outcome, and you want to stop that happening again. And it was a really, I suppose, Chris, an interesting one. There was a management rights termination dispute a little while ago. Body corporate lost, costs were awarded against the body corporate, and one of the defence side of things in terms of why costs shouldn't be awarded against the body corporate is because the owners weren't aware of what's going on. And the response to that from the judge was, well, they were. A lot of them voted to actually conduct themselves and vote for this particular proceeding, and those that didn't bother voting are just as accountable in the sense that they chose not to engage in the affairs of the body corporate. So there's no hiding from that.
Yep. Probably the final one, untying the knot, you want to take a stand. So this is a situation where something happens and you're like, no, that's it. We really need to take a stand on this one. Something needs to change here. I think that might actually happen quite a bit from a committee point of view, where there are recurrent problems happening in the building. And the committee goes, we have to do something about this. We have to take a stand. We have to draw a line. That's probably it. Have to draw a line at that point. The unifying theme there, so that all of those things are things that Frank and I, when we were workshopping this, so okay, that's what untying the knot means. But the unifying theme of all of that is that you need help to do something. You just don't quite know what help you need, and you don't know who to ask for it. Would you agree, Frank?
Absolutely. And this is sort of strategic in the sense, and I suppose I'm going to use an analogy here that might annoy the medical profession to a degree, but I think it's sort of Dr. Google. We all sort of, when you have a cold, you got a cough, whatever, you lesion, little mark on your arm, Googling away, tell me what's wrong, go in and see the doctor and say, well, this is what I think. No, it's not, mate. This is what it is. And to be honest, what I've learned with Chris doing these things over the last 12 months is a lot of people come to us with what they perceive to be the problem, and it's actually not their problem. Their problem is something else. So what they're talking to us about are the examples we spoke about before in terms of particular feelings or issues. And from a lawyer's perspective, it's not really, we're not built with a whole lot of empathy. And we're very linear thinkers. And this is where Chris, coming from a completely different background, adds a substantial degree of value. Because what we're really talking about in terms of these things is a bit of strategy and a bit of helping people see the forest for the trees. So you've got an issue that's manifesting itself in a certain way, and it is any of these things. You're feeling sick in the stomach. You get an email from someone, and your stomach drops. Yeah. You don't want to look at your emails after 5:30 at night. That is another sign that something's not right. Now, what we're trying to do with this is not for you to diagnose what help you need, but to really in effect, I suppose we'll get to how to sort of access this at the end, but it's let us help you understand what it is you need to do and what we think you should do. And that might or might not be some form of legal intervention. There might be there are plenty of other ways to resolve issues that aren't necessarily threats from lawyers. And that's what this is all about.
That's right. That's right. So a couple of case studies then from my time with Hines so far. One of the most common ways in which I and Frank have been helping people untie the knot is just by having a conference. And another way that we're referring to that is facilitation. But in effect, it's a conference, and Zoom lends itself really well to that kind of thing. So you have an hour with me, sometimes Frank, but most of the time just me. It's like, okay, where are we at? What is the situation? And let's table all of those things that you think are a problem at the moment. Okay, that's good. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. And in the back half of that conference, what are we doing with items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And that's where I'll say, on number 1, I think you need to do this. Number 2, don't worry about it. Just leave it. Put it to one side. Number 3, you probably will need legal advice on that one, given the circumstances. We can arrange that for you, and so on down the list. So what you come away with at the end of the conference is a way forward, a map. Here is where we'll go. Yep. So a couple of actual case studies then. One of the specific case studies from that conference analogy I was just talking about is what I would call challenging person discussions. And that's the very nice name for it. And unfortunately, I'm doing more and more work in that space. And I say unfortunately because that means that there are a lot of challenging people out there. It would be great if I didn't have to do that work, but there it is. And the way it has worked in a lot of cases is that I've been approached, it's usually by a committee. We've got this person. It's not necessarily just an owner. It could actually be a number of different individuals. Got this person, it's causing us grief, it's causing us stress, what do we do about it? And so it's actually working with the committee to develop a strategy to manage that situation. How do we work our way through that process? And there are various ways it could be done. One of the ways is for me to act as a buffer between the committee and the person, or the person and the committee for that matter. Putting myself in between where, to a certain extent, Frank, and tell me if you think this is a good way of describing it, I become their envoy.
Yeah. And it's working, I think, that one particularly for the strata managers, because what happens is people get entrenched, and then it becomes this sort of email warfare where everyone's throwing demands at everyone else and requiring responses by certain dates and diatribes and reply all sorts of things. Yeah. It's just actually, and in those moments, you definitely can't see the forest for the trees because you've lost sight of what a strategy to deal with this issue might actually be. So that is the stop, catch breath. Mm-hmm. What are the issues? How do we address them? And I think it is, and I know the feedback from strata managers, because at the moment, most of what happens is the strata managers come back, and this is an issue for the strata management industry as a whole, is, you as a committee or us as a lawyer have got, I don't know, maybe you've got one committee to deal with, one body corporate. Maybe you're on a couple of committees, in which case you are absolutely a sucker for punishment. But strata managers are usually dealing 30, 40, 50, 60 committees. So they come in from weekends and they've got 40,000 emails to deal with.
Yep.
So we're really helping strata managers also get some visibility on what they need to do, because they're busy, and it's that time to think.
Yep.
Stop and assess.
So in one of these particular cases, and usually how it works is that I'm engaged over a period of weeks. I usually suggest it's a few months to really start to see some results. In this particular case, I was engaged for, I think it was about a 4-week period to begin with, and I received all of these emails from these individuals that were causing grief. And had a look at them and said, well, you don't need to respond to this, you don't need to respond to that, but you do need to respond to this one. And if you do need to respond, here's my suggested words for you to use back in response. On one of those particular engagements, it worked so well that I got fired because they said...
So I'd rather use the word released.
Yes. I got released because they said, well, things have actually settled down. And we think it's actually because of some of the stuff you've told us, so we don't need you anymore. I said, oh, okay, fine. We'll see where things end up in the future on that one. Another example, which is a very different way of doing it, we had a committee come to us and say, look, we have got some problems, but we're actually just not sure what those problems are. We think they're this, but we'd just like to talk about it and figure it out. So, okay, we had the Zoom webinar. And as it turned out, what really emerged from that was that there was a pretty complex and technical corporate issue that they needed to sort out, which they're currently doing. But what also emerged, surprise, surprise, is there were some individuals they dealt with on a day-to-day basis that were acting in ways that were causing grief, that were causing problems. Very different from the grief I was just talking about in the example. But a different kind of grief. So we gave a few tips about that kind of thing and a few pieces of advice about how to deal with that. And then the final one that I would just very quickly mention, I've talked a lot about committees engaging me, but I actually had an owner recently engage me to talk through an experience they had with my former office. They had been in recipient of an order and wanted to better understand what that order was actually telling them, not just for the immediate outcomes, but also for the future. Where do I go from here with this particular situation? In the end, that actually turned out to be a really useful exercise because I was able to reality check a few misconceptions, but also give a few pointers for the next steps forward. So the next time this happens at the next AGM, if you get back to this discussion again, I would recommend that you do this. And then that particular owner actually said, well, I was actually thinking about saying this at the AGM. And I said, you can do that for sure. I would just recommend that you frame it in these terms, these very specific terms. So this is very much literally advisory. I'm advising you that whatever action you take, say it this way. Don't say it that other way, say it this way. So the actual action, no different. There's no course of action that's any different. It's the presentation of the message. The presentation of the message to the other side that makes the difference, I think, in that particular case. So you can see it's been a varied set of circumstances, hasn't it, Frank?
It has, mate. And even we helped one management rights owner who was dealing with a lot of aggression from a particular committee and a particular group of owners. And it's sort of, well, okay, here's how you need to approach that. Here's what you should be doing. Here's, and I mean, that was again another one where there was the immediacy of responses and there was lots of anger and aggression, all that sort of thing. The very simple start is slow down. There's nothing that urgent about what it is you need to do. So, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we're talking about as sort of the advisory consultancy piece, because that's not legal advice. That's really relationship management. Clearing your head, getting the ability to sort of step back and actually get control of what it is that's going on in your particular world. Because these strata relationships are such that everyone's trapped with everyone else. The only way to leave, it's sort of not quite Thunderdome, but the only way to leave is to sell your lot and go, or to sell your business and go. Even if you resign off the committee and still own a lot, you're still going to be getting those emails and seeing that correspondence and potentially getting wound up about it. So these things are the legal solutions, because I can guarantee you, again, before Chris's intervention, there might a little bit of slowing down, but the legal response is to go back and get aggressive and get on the front foot and start telling people, no, well, don't speak to us that way, all that sort of stuff, when there's another way to approach a lot of these issues. And it might be, as Chris was saying, some of them, it's like it's sort of, for me, it's almost my little magician's cloak. On the right-hand side here, I've got the legal solutions. On this side, I've now got the alternative solutions. And it might be a mixture of both. But really, and back to that committee engagement, Chris, where you were released, what he's effectively done there is help the committee understand how it is they need to respond to these particular people and the manner of responding, which has taken a lot of the heat out of it and a lot of the aggression out of it. And it's sort of, these webinars in a sense are educative. We're sort of helping people understand how to approach things. So the consultancy or advisory piece is a bit more specific, almost education, help people manage a problem, get their heads around what the issues are, hopefully arm them with what they need to do to solve their particular issues, to move forward in whatever way they can, with legal backup if there's no other choice.
That's right. That's right. I should just quickly note, I've got a couple of proposals out at the moment that some potential clients are considering. There are situations where people want to untie the knot, but despite all of their best intentions and desire to do so, they physically can't because the legislation does not allow it to be untied at the moment. So when you've got a situation where you have literally hit the wall and you can't go any further, so it's not because you're not making the effort, it's because you've made the effort and you can't go any further, I've actually got some proposals out for people to work with them to look for changes to that wall, to actually get a change to legislation. That is another example of some advisory work that I'm engaged with.
And you might think that's impossible, but it's happened 3 times through. Once was an actual legislative change right at the death. Twice we've had legislation changed on us because of loopholes we found, which is interesting and a little bit rewarding. So, and I think I'm certainly learning a lot more about the machinery of government with Chris. And we have a unique situation in Queensland now where we have a fixed 4-year term. We have a new Attorney General who's fresh in the seat. So no one really knows the way she's going to approach things or what the government's particular agenda is for strata. But if you were going to have a discussion with government, now is absolutely the time.
And not only that, but again, if you've been faced with a recurrent problem over a series of years and you keep finding the same answer, you can't go any further because you just literally cannot proceed, then you've got to get the issue on the table, because otherwise it will literally never change. I'm using the word literally a lot there, but I think you get my point. So with all that in mind, how do you go about accessing an advisory service or something advisory offered through us? And I guess that might be a bit challenging for someone. It might be, I think maybe I've got something possibly, but I just don't know. What do we do? Well, let's simplify that. Very first step is let's start a dialogue. That's it. It's always that simple. Drop us an email, sketch us the outline. We'll have a look at it. That's step 2. Literally step 2. Again, I've said literally. Step 2. Frank and I are going to triage it. So we'll look at what you've sketched out to us. So, Frank, what do you reckon? Is this a straight out legal proceeding? If so, away Frank goes. The quote's prepared for that. Easy enough. Or it might be, you know what? There's actually a little bit of finessing that could be done on this particular situation. That's the discussion, literally. Again, that's the discussion that we will have. And we do it based upon our experience. What we have encountered in the past, what we think is going to work. And then step 3, we will provide you with our suggested approach. Here's what we think is going to work for you. I think it's fair to say, Frank, increasingly, we are trying to provide people with more options. So it's not just, here's your legal advice. Do you want it? Do you not? We're actually giving people a series of options now.
Absolutely. And we can fix a fee for all of this stuff. So it's not hourly rate where you're guessing at what it is. It's actually, here's the cost for us effectively to help you strategize what it is you need to do, help you understand what it is that you're facing, help you understand how you can address certain things, tell you if some things are simply unaddressable for whatever reason. You know, it's a bit of client the other day is we've got this effectively a vexatious litigant. We want to be able to do this. So, well, there is no scope for declaring someone a vexatious litigant in the Commissioner's office. So you've got to deal with this in a different way. So what is that?
Yep.
And I suppose the question from Rian there is almost just as relevant as ever, Chris.
Yep.
You know, it is. And I think to me, the answer to that is some people don't want to have relationships. You know, we call it community living. Some people don't want to live in any form of community relationship. So if that's the case and there is no way to actually get to them, and I think this is one of the things that Chris would be teaching me, is that when people get entrenched, it's remarkable when conversations start how things can actually change. But if they're locked away in their box, then you need to learn how to deal with them and manage them in a way that complies with what you need to do at law.
That's right. There is always, Rian, in my experience, you would be surprised the number of times a relationship seemed completely unsolvable and it actually ended up going somewhere. And I've made this point a few times. You don't have to be best friends with somebody that you deal with in a body corporate. In fact, I don't think you should be in a lot of cases. You don't need to be chums. You don't need to be having Prosecco on the deck with them every other week. That's not it. You need to have a base for you to be able to move forward and conduct a business, because it's a business. Let's face it, being in the body corporate is conducting a business. So that's what you need. I would suggest that I could actually offer some insight about how you actually get to that point. Why do I have that insight? Because I have spent a couple of decades dealing with challenging and difficult situations in the public service. It was all people-based. So I've got a bit of insight there.
Yeah, and Chris, I think that the line I haven't used for a little while, we're going to do it again now, is in his 5.5 years as Commissioner, no one rang the Commissioner's office saying, gee, I'm glad I bought this unit and you guys are doing a great job. Everyone rang to whinge. So there's not much that Chris hasn't seen in that period of time that isn't coming across our desk now. So and that's the options and the choices and the range of ways to approach things that aren't just bashing people legally.
And importantly, Frank, one of the things I'd say is that as much as I've seen the things which work, I've seen the things which don't work. It's actually the things which don't work which are much more obvious and much easier to detect over a period of time. I know what does not work. I know what does not work from a practical point of view. I know what does not work from a Commissioner's office point of view, and a few other instances as well. Daniel thank you for tuning in. Daniel made a point about a so-called vexatious litigant. I'm sure there's plenty of them around, but just to clarify, lest anybody get a bit confused watching this, there's no such thing as vexatious litigants in body corporate and community management space, not yet anyway. We've talked a lot about untying the knot and talked about the options, but what are the benefits? What are the differences? What does it actually mean for you? Because a lot of you will be watching this and going, well, that's all fantastic, but that's going to cost me a stack of money because you're in a law firm and that costs money. Yes, it does cost money. It's a business. Yes, it does cost money. But why are there benefits? Well, you save a bit of time. That's one of the obvious things. You've got a lingering problem and say, for example, you need to take that to QCAT. That's 18 months out of your life.
Commissioner's office is every bit of 6.
Yep, so save time. I can potentially be involved in a discussion conference in a week or two. Set it up in that time frame. You will actually save money, believe it or not. You will actually save money. If you have to be represented in a legal proceeding, again, I use the QCAT example, we're looking at probably hundreds of thousands of dollars for those matters. I can assure you that I do not charge hundreds of thousands of dollars to facilitate a discussion. I can assure you of that. Notwithstanding that Frank would like me to charge that, I don't charge that.
No, really, it's about the value. It really is about the value. But it's by any definition, what we're talking about here is going to be much, much less expensive than any form of litigation ever.
But the important thing, one of the really important things is it's a circuit breaker for you. So this comes right back to our very first point about untying the knot. One of the great benefits of untying the knot is the relief that you feel. It's like, oh, okay, the light has dawned. I know now that there is a way forward, because when you started, you didn't think there was a way forward. oh, this is too hard, this is too much, this is really awful, I can't see a way out of it. Actually, there is a way out of it. Yes, it requires some effort. Yes, it requires some money. Yes, it requires us to do something, but there is a way out of it.
It's about having choice, isn't it?
Yep.
You've actually got choices. I think the worst thing in life, in a sense, is not having choice, being backed into a corner, and that's it. So with these things, everyone comes at it with a range of choices. So you've actually got a direction you can head in.
There are absolutely, Frank. There are a range of choices, and we've come to the end of our time today. As always, it's always surprising when we get to this point. It's like, wow, that half hour flew. Probably the final thing that I'd say is, look, as always, drop us a line. You're not sure, you think there's an issue, drop us a line. Frank and I will straight out tell you if we can't help you. Straight out tell you, no, this is not something we can assist with. Or we'll be direct with you and say, you actually need to take that to court if that's actually what it requires. Chances are, though, that's not what we'll say in most situations.
Yep. And we certainly don't charge to look at things and give people quotes. But if you don't ask, you're never going to find out.
Definitely. So let's have the discussion. Let's hear about it. We'll give you what we think is the way forward. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. As always, really appreciate it. As I say, the feedback's been really good, so thank you for taking the time. Next week, really looking forward to next week, Frank.
It's bugger, isn't it?
Next week, we try to unravel the mysteries of Bugta. Daniel has said, let's do a 3-hour on Bugta. We are not doing 3 hours on Bugta next week.
2 days.
Daniel, there is no way we're doing 3 hours on Bugta. But yeah, next week, we're going to try and demystify and say something useful about Bugta. And if you don't know what Bugta means, get on Google, find out, and then get ready for next week. But in the meantime, Frank, as always, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us again. And Chris, as always.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.